wondered, why is it that we get into the most heated confrontations with the people that we love the most? Well, Dr. Carl Pickhardt is with us today to help us with our combative family members. Welcome to Smart Life, Carl.
Right.
I think we all have them, don't we all have combative family members? And the real problem of this, even if it's extended family, you meant to marry the woman, but you didn't mean to marry her mother, kind of a thing, but you're dealing with her mother likely at holidays, at most important events in your lives, birth of babies, deaths.
When you talk about family, I mean, what you're talking about is, relationships that are, invested with a lot of caring. And so that just increases the emotional sensitivity. Sometimes you get, what seem to be, over responses or blow-ups, and those, a lot of times people say, well, how can something so small be so upsetting to you? And they kind of, they want to dismiss that, and what they don't realize is that little things are big things in disguise. So they need to know why this incident or this word, had the emotional impact it did. And so a lot of times people want to just kind of say, well, let's forget it and go forward. And that's a mistake, because different kinds of overreactions are very, very informative about what's happening in the relationship.
Okay, but at a certain point, just to be honest with you, Dr. Pickhardt, I don't care. Like, I know that sounds terrible, but like there comes a certain point where there's so much drama sometimes in these especially extended family situations, that you just think it's overwhelming and it can consume your whole life. And so there has to come a point where you at some point have to kind of reason that, gosh, this is, a few days of a year we have to deal with this, and the rest of the year we just need to chill. Like, it shouldn't carry over into other aspects of our life, should it?
Well, I'm not sure what, I mean, if you're saying that the family gets together and then some kind of a blow up occurs, or somebody acts more sensitive than you think is appropriate.
Yeah, and I think, too, like there are certain members of the family that are always causing the drama, and then there are certain members of the family that are always just trying to figure out what to do to make it better, Well,
but again, what you have is people operating in ignorance about what is going on. So that, for example, if you and I are talking and we're family members, and what happens is you say something and I I react in a strong emotional way, that could be a number of different things. It could be that I'm suppressing stuff, and all of a sudden I'm under, and this, what you said is a kind of trigger, and I'm under stress, and I come out with that stressful response, or all of a sudden I think, gosh, somebody, that's what you just said to me is similar to what somebody else said to me one time, and that upsets me, or it's, it's symbolic. It just goes to show that that's what people think of me, or I'm caught by surprise. And what happens is people just keep repeating. We keep repeating unless we understand what the heck's going on.
Mm-hmm. But don't we, as active members of that family, almost need to act like active members of an employee team or a sports team, or and be responsible for communicating that ourselves? Because I don't really see it as as everybody's responsibility to be going around worrying about everyone's sensitivities, especially when we're talking about adults. If we're talking about children, that's a different thing. But let's just say we're talking about extended families and we're talking about adults. Doesn't the adult in the situation need to be able to say, hey, you know what? That's a pressure point for me. I was stressed out that day, and you hit that nerve, and I reacted emotionally, and I need to improve on that, because otherwise what I see happening...
That's perfect. I mean, that's exactly what you said is exactly the point. I said something, you make that response, and you've just given me information about what was the relationship between what I said and how you responded, and you put it in context. So that's perfect. That's exactly what needs to happen.
Okay. And so what do you do about the people, the learned helpless people that are invariably in every family? They are. This is, if you can't tell, this is something that I have just really grappled with, because I came from a really small family and I married into this massively large family with all sorts of different personalities and sensitivities and cultural differences and all of those things. I think culture plays a key component here. I really do. But it is really hard to be sensitive to everyone's individual you know,
Well, but I mean, part of it, were you an only child?
yes, of two only children. And so we had Christmas was simple, you know, thanks and here you go, thanks and here you go, thanks. And that was pretty much it. So when you then extend that into 30, 40, 50 people at every holiday.
Well, then, I mean, then what you're talking about is a really complicated acculturation experience.
Yeah,
and there's
just
no
became a
way
counseling
you're going to
session.
get acculturated without differences exploding on you.
Yeah,
And that's why you want to learn every time one of these things goes awry. You want to be able to have that conversation because it's like you entered a foreign country.
yeah.
And all of a sudden, somebody there who's in residence takes offense at what you've said, and you don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to find out, what are the norms, what are the rules, what are the dynamics, what are the expectations.
Well, and
You're trying to
that's a great
understand
question.
This new family system that you've never operated
Yeah,
in.
that's a great question that you bring me to, Dr. Pickhardt. Is it? I mean, this might sound goofy, but is writing some sort of family? This is like how we aspire to treat each other. Some sort of thing so that people can understand each other and all be on the same page. How can you avoid those very basic cultural differences that are bound to arise in whenever you blend two families, whether we're talking about a new step parent or
one example would be, suppose that you marry somebody and they're in this large family and you don't understand the dynamics in the large family. It is certainly helpful for the person you marry to operate as an informant and as a guide to help you understand this new culture.
Mm-hmm.
That's very, very important to do. And that's what, in-law relationships are essentially invitations into unexpected kinds of encounters that nobody really anticipated.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have if you have an informant there, which would be in this case your partner, they can be enormously helpful to you, and sometimes you can get other family members who may do that for you.
Yeah. What are the key things, Dr. Pickhardt, with really just 1 minute remaining? What are the key things that we can do to avoid anger that results from confrontation? I guess I'm not as afraid of confrontation as I am bitterness that can result from it.
Well, you want to obviously, you want to manage your communication. So you want to be, for example, when you're having a conversation, you want to be operational, not abstract. You want to talk about, what you want to have happen or not happen, as opposed to specifically in terms of behaviors, as opposed to some kind of, large thing. I just want people to be polite. Well, that doesn't say anything. But if operationally, what I mean is, I would love it if somebody would just listen to me, because that represents politeness. Then talk about the operational definition and be non-evaluative. So you do not get judgmental about how somebody behaves. You take issue with the choices they make, and you say, I really disagree with the choice you made. This is why, and this is what I'd like to be able to talk about with you.
All right. Thank you so much for being on the show once again. Dr. Pickhardt, remind us where we can find you online.
Yeah, www.carlpickhardt.com.